All right, a great big welcome to the Eucatastrophe Fellowship. We are in for a real treat today with Dr. Devin Brown. Our theme here in September is Back to School with the Professor. And we thought it would be wonderful to have a professor who is an expert in Tolkien, but then also in C.S. Lewis. So it's a joy to have you, Dr. Brown. Really, really great to have you. Dr. Brown is a Lilly Scholar and Professor of English at Asbury University, and he teaches a bunch of literature classes there. He specifically teaches a course on Lewis and Tolkien. He is also the director of Asbury's first-year honors seminar, which is pretty fantastic, and he has a Ph.D. from the University of South Carolina and a master's from the University of Florida. He's an award-winning author and frequent speaker at conferences and college campuses. We had the joy of meeting him for the first time at Celebrate Tolkien back in the fall of 2017, down in Greenville, South Carolina. It was great to meet you then and great to catch up now together. He's got a whole bunch of books. Just a few of them as highlights for our Eucatastrophe crowd to know about. He has a book called Tolkien, How an Obscure Oxford Professor Wrote The Hobbit and Became the Most Beloved Author of the Century. Also a really cool one called Hobbit Lessons, and then also the Christian World of the Hobbit, Bringing Narnia Home, and A Life Observed, a spiritual biography of C.S. Lewis. So we're in for a real treat. It's an immense honor to have you with us, Dr. Brown, on Eucatastrophe this month. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's great to be here.
So good to have you. So I would love to know what your own earliest memory. Everybody kind of has their own come to Tolkien story. What got you going on Tolkien? What got you going into the legendarium? What and whom motivated you to start reading The Professor?
So my story is probably a little different. I grew up on the very blue-collar south side of Chicago and did not know who Tolkien was. And I'll just say this. Not only did I not know who he was, I didn't know how to pronounce his name for the first 30 years of my life. Mm-hmm. So for a while, I always say Tolkien, right? Sure. And then for a while after I learned it was wrong, I tried to say Tolkien, and I would say it right about 3 times and then go back. Mm-hmm. So usually I just say, look, I know I say it wrong, and I say Tolkien. All right.
All of us guilty as charged at points, right?
But, anyway, so I grew up on the blue-collar south side of Chicago and went to a church where people love the Lord with all their heart, but kind of forgot about the rest of that, all your mind part. Mm-hmm. Anyway, not a lot of bookish stuff going on, and I was a pretty bookish little kid. My family would go camping every summer for 2 weeks when my dad's factory shut down. And I hated camping, right? Everyone else seemed to like it, but I hated it. And so I think when I was in 8th grade, we were going to go for 2 weeks to a couple state parks in northern Indiana. And we'd have our little pop-up trailer and do state park stuff in Indiana, which, paddle boats, nature trails, you get the idea. Anyway, so I knew that I needed to have some books, right? So I go to the public library, right? Something that people don't use quite as much as they used to, but that was my main source of books. And back then, you could only take out 5. Now, my guess, if you were a middle school boy and you wanted 6 now, they'd have a parade for you. Oh my gosh, this middle school boy wants 6 books. Holy smokes, come on over here. Anyway, I could only take 5. I don't remember what the 5th one was. But I went to the science fiction fantasy section. It was marked then. It wasn't Dewey Decimal, right? So you could find books. That's another whole thing. Anyway, I pulled down the fattest ones because I know they had to last me 2 weeks. And then off we headed to northern Indiana. So the first afternoon there, the rest of my family, my 2 brothers and mom and dad, they all go paddle boating or nature walking or whatever they're doing. And I'm sitting at a cement picnic table in northern Indiana, and I start reading. And I don't know who wrote these books. I don't know anything about them, but I have, the 3 Lord of the Rings books and The Hobbit and some other 5th book. And I don't read them in order because I don't know. So I read Fellowship first. Mm-hmm. And your audience will know this. For about the first 20 pages of Fellowship, Tolkien takes the stance as though hobbits are real people, right? Hobbits are not around as much as they used to be. We don't see them as often. They're quiet folk. And so 8th grade Devin Brown, sitting at a cement picnic table in northern Indiana State Park for about 20 minutes, thought hobbits were real people, right? Which was pretty great. And then I thought, oh, I get it. This is just some sort of thing.
And you started looking around Indiana for the hobbits, right?
Well, hobbits, the real people, they don't. Anyway, he does that stance as though they're real. So it was kind of magical. So anyway, that was my introduction. I read them and loved them. And then I'll just add the little epilogue. My older brother goes off to college, first person in our family to go to college. And by this time, I'm a sophomore in high school. And he comes home at Thanksgiving break, throws a book on my bed, says, here, you should read this, right? Oh, man, I hope Sharon gets the phone. I don't think she's going to. She's just jumped in the shower.
No worries.
Oh, my gosh. Anyway, sorry out there. Life during COVID.
That's right.
Anyway,
no worries.
So my older brother comes back and throws this book on the bed and says, here, you should read this. And I'm 16. And it's The Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe, which I had never heard of before, right? So I go back to the same public library and I say, by the way, there's this author, C.S. Lewis. I don't know, I really like this book. Are there any others by him? Right? And she says, oh my gosh. Any others by him? You don't know. And she's bringing the other librarian over. He doesn't know. And so, of course, there were 6 more of those and a bunch more after that. And so here I am growing up, loving Tolkien, loving Lewis, my 2 favorite authors. Not many other people I knew had read them. And then at some point, as you guess, oh my gosh, these guys were best friends. Without Tolkien, there would have been no Lord of the Rings. Without Tolkien, there would have been no Narnia, because and without Lewis, there would have been no Lord of the Rings. So my 2 favorite authors become, friends, which is double. It's the best literary friendship around. Then I go off to college, right? And I'm an English major, but there's no classes in Lewis and Tolkien back then, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, there still aren't many. Let's be honest, and that's a whole different topic. We could maybe talk about why when you pick up the Norton Anthology of English Literature, Lewis and Tolkien don't get to be in it. Lots of people get to be in it now. Trust me, way more than there used to be. But still, anybody but Lewis or Tolkien. Anyway, so I didn't take one class. These are my favorite authors. And of course, in grad school, they always want to say, who's your favorite author? And I said, well, someone that we don't teach here, Tolkien. And they, oh, really? Anyway, they're not sure I belong there. That sort of thing. And so finally, I get out, I graduate, I get my Ph.D., thank goodness. And a friend of mine says, have you ever seen this? And he hands me this little tiny journal called The Lamppost, a literary journal of C.S. Lewis studies. I said, oh my gosh. I didn't know there was a journal for C.S. Lewis studies. So, because I said, I know how to write these things. This is my whole thing. And so I write an article, because at the PhD, I've learned to write articles, not on Lewis. I send it in and they take it, and I don't know if there's any of your people out there. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And I'm thinking, now the world's going to come to my door and be contacting me. I read your article. Anyway, you're paid, but not with money. You get 2 copies of the journal, and I'll just say, I know there's people out there who will be doing this if they haven't done it already. This is one of these things you get 2 copies, one for you and the other one's for your mom, in case you didn't know. Right? So she can show all her friends. This is my son, the scholar. You see, he's in this little journal. Anyway, I wrote an article for them, wrote another one for them, and, did a lot of what I would call small things, and then they led to bigger things. So anyway, I tell that story because I think when people see somebody who's written a couple books on Tolkien or something like that, or done something, they can't imagine that they had the same kind of beginning they did, which was just to pick it up and read it. And I just happened to pick it up because I needed a book to read that summer at the state park in Indiana. And the other thing I'll just say is I think it doesn't always happen, but, I was a Tolkien fan before I was a Tolkien scholar, and still am. Always will be a fan. And trust me, and people who are listening to this may not get it, but there's a certain kind of English scholar who's not supposed to be a fan of the person they're studying. It's so critical and so, objective and all that sort of stuff. So I pretty much make it clear I'm a Tolkien fan who now has, learned enough to write some things on it, but I make no bones about it. He's my man. So
that's awesome. I mean, one of the things that Dan Kruger and I often talk about is the whole just the whole principle of realizing that you make advances in your grasp intellectually of literature, of an author like Tolkien, an author like Lewis, one page at a time.
Yeah.
One step at a time, one next story at a time, and keep enjoying it. Like, I mean, and that's what you're getting after right there. I mean, those are just exceptional insights. It's take steps at a time with it, and your acumen grows, your own gravitas on the topic grows, your gravitas on Tolkien himself grows, but it's a page at a time, it's a story at a time, and it's really good. And keep enjoying it.
And I don't. Yeah, and I don't know there's any other way. And I'll say this about Lewis and Tolkien. I'll lump them together. Scholars, they're a very welcoming bunch. There's plenty of room for, matter of fact, there's lots of room for the next generation. So I just want to jump in and say, if any of you have aspirations to be a Tolkien scholar, there's a Willie Nelson song, Mama, don't let your baby screw up to be Tolkien scholars, because there's no money in it, right? Or not much fame. But if you like it, if you love it, there's a way. You don't have to be an English professor to do it. And like you say, the first time through, you're just trying to figure out all these names. You get to the Council of Elrond, and there's like 30 people you've never met before. Who are all these people? But you read through them, and before you know it, you've got it all figured out. And then maybe you start reading the letters. And I know that's another question down the line, but you can start wherever you are. And the other thing, it's great books to spend a lifetime with. So to answer your question, I started in 8th grade, and here I am, sort of near the end of my career, and it's like, what a great time to spend with you. Because I'll just say this. So we're recording this during the COVID thing, and maybe people will watch it this fall, and maybe people watch it after all. But what a great book to read during a time of difficulty, right? And you're stuck at home, and you can journey Middle Earth with the fellowship, or you're going through your own hard times, and you go, man, I wish this hadn't happened during my time. And Gandalf's there to say,
he's right there.
So does everybody, right? All you have to do is to decide what to do with what's been given you, and it's just been great. So anyway,
we've had a lot of the gang and the fellowship indicate how much they are benefiting from the theme of hope. The theme of hope within the legendarium, and that reality that during this time, even just to be able to go on the hope adventure, and then pull in the applicability, and be able to see that step at a time. So I'm curious for you, Devin, what most amazes and maybe fascinates you about Tolkien's own academic career, and why? Obviously, we have this interesting thing of him in a sense running dual tracks of first really building a world of stories, and then budding into this scholar and person of academia. But what fascinates you about that?
So, everybody probably knows, they've seen a picture of Professor Tolkien. There's a couple famous one. He's in his cap and gown and looking very Oxfordian, right? So he's a professor of Anglo-Saxon at the most prestigious Anglo-Saxon kind of school in the whole world, right? And by the way, if you go in search of Tolkien, you can go and visit the school where he was an undergrad, and then you can go and visit the two schools where he was a professor at. So he's an undergrad at Exeter, and then he's a professor at two other colleges, ends up at Merton. And then you could even see his house, of course. Everything in Oxford is great. It's great for Tolkien fans. But, he had this other career where he was, we know him as the world-class author, but he was a world-class teacher. And the thing that's nice to remember, and it's very encouraging, is he almost got sent down, kicked out, right? And because they have the tests are bigger over there. We have quizzes and tests every 6 weeks, kind of in college here, but they have a couple major milestones. And so, and I'll just say this: we should mention the Tolkien movie, right, which is kind of pretty good, but if you know Tolkien, so frustrating in some ways. But we'll take what we can.
We'll take what we can get. Yeah, we reviewed it here last spring as well, and it's similar, mixed vibes, but we'll take it.
And the TCBS group was super, and Edith came off pretty good, although not always as accurate as it could have been, but good enough. So and anyway, they show him in that when he goes off to Oxford that he's not doing particularly well and might be sent down because he's studying the wrong thing. And man, that is great encouragement for all of us today. If you find yourself going down a path that's really not your path. Maybe you picked it and you picked the wrong one, or your parents encouraged you, or whatever it is, however you happen to find, get off that path and get on the path that you're meant to be on. And I'll just say, people helped him out, and I'd like to hear that story. So he had a professor, not the one that he ends up studying with, the famous one that we see in the movie, but the one who was his professor back when he was in classics. In classics, in case people don't know, is Latin and Greek, right? The classic literature, right? And that's not his passion. He's a linguist, but those aren't the languages that are for him. And his head professor sees that. He says, "Look, you're not doing very good. You're not passionate about this." He said, "But you're passionate about that. And that's what you should do." And I don't know if everybody knows this, but Tolkien, was an orphan, and he needed a scholarship, and he didn't get a full one because he'd also been studying that stuff that was on the test. So he got a half scholarship, so to speak. Anyway, enough that he could go. Anyway, but when you get a scholarship, it's in a certain field. So he had a scholarship to study classics, and this professor went behind his back secretly and made sure that he could take that with him when he went to study what he loved. And it was only until when Tolkien got back to Oxford as a professor himself, someone said, "By the way, you know that so-and-so did that for you." He said, "No, I never knew." It's a great story.
He did not know that, eh? Okay.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, he didn't know that. He just,
that's fascinating.
And you can see how they wouldn't make a deal.
Right.
You have your scholarship to go do that. So
right.
Anyway, if anybody out there has had, like Tolkien did, a couple bad years in college, something that wasn't quite you, it's never too late to get on the right path. And then things just took off. I mean, man, because he was studying things that were his passion but weren't on the test. And so then he needed to switch, though, that what his passion was also
needed to land in his passion area in order to then flourish. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, that's really
and that's a story today.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's really good.